So today, we're going to have a discussion about the five senses. The five senses are the things that your body uses to gather information about the changing circumstances around you, and it sends all that information to your brain so that your brain can process it all, make sense of it all, and come to good decisions that will keep you safe and happy. Safe and happy is good. Yay, golf clap, safe and happy. That's good stuff. All right, so first one we're going to talk about is vision. Vision starts with the eye. Now, let me make it clear. You do not see with your eye. Your eyes are simply cameras that they're taking multiple rapid pictures of the changing world around you and sending all that information to your back of your brain. And there, your brain is processing all that information, interpreting it, making judgments on it, so that your brain can make decisions. So you're really seeing with your brain. Your eyes are just cameras taking multiple pictures. Your brain blends everything else together. Okay? So how does your eye actually do this? Well, your eye actually is a sphere that's filled with this jelly-like substance, and it's got a hole in the front of it. That hole is called the pupil, all right? And it functions like an iris. That iris is going to open up really wide if it's low light, or if you're really excited about something, yay, like a new science video. Okay, your pupil is going to get really, really big, right? So it lets more light in because you're excited, or it's really low light and you have to see as much as possible. Also, it can get really small if the light is really bright, because it wants to protect the back part of your eye, which is very important. The back of your eye is called the retina, and that's the screen on which light from the outside world is going to get broadcast or transmitted. It's going to be transmitted to that screen. How it gets transmitted is this. You have the cornea and the lens. Those are two parts of the front of the eye that are going to function to bend that light and focus it on the retina so that your retina can develop an image of what's going on and send those signals back to the brain through what's called the optic nerve. Now, how does the retina capture those images and send it back? Well, it's got two specialized cells that it uses. The first set of cells are called the rods. The rods function in low light. They function really with just kind of black and white images. They help us with contrast, seeing bright and dark and all that. These are great things for seeing at night. This is why in the middle of the night when you wake up, oh, I need a drink of water. Or just a coffee or something, all right? That's when you have to go and you're walking around the house at night. Everything's actually in black and white. You might not notice it because you know what colors things are supposed to be, but in reality, everything is really black and white when you're walking around. That's because it's those rods that are being triggered, and they're giving your brain all that kind of information. Now, the rods are really kind of neat because in low light, you're not focusing a lot of light in the primary focal point of your retina, which means that at dim light, if you look straight at, like if you're stargazing and you want to look at a cool star or a comet or something else, if you look straight at it, oftentimes it kind of flickers in and out. You have to look almost to the side of it in order to see it where it's supposed to be. And the reason is because the rods tend to focus better in the peripheral more so than directly in front. So at nighttime, if you're stargazing, look off to the side. Now the cones are different. You've got three types of cones. They all function with different colors. You have a red, blue, and a green cone. Different types that are scattered throughout, but concentrated in what's called the yellow spot of the retina. And that is where most of the light during the daytime, when there's plenty of light, that's where most of that light's going to get concentrated for you to form an image. And all that information is then going to go, again, back to your brain for interpretation. So in the daylight, with good light, you can focus directly at something, and at nighttime, you've got to kind of look to the side. And that's how your eye works with the rods and the cones. So how does hearing work? Hearing is the next sense that we're going to talk about. Hearing is a function of the ears. Now, the ears have more to do than just hearing. It's really kind of cool. For instance, the ears, the inner part of your ear, you have three little, what are called the semicircular canals, and they're all at right angles to one another. These are fluid-filled canals that help you maintain balance. Now, to understand how they work, I want to show you something. So come over here just for a minute. So, this is my model of the cochlea. Cochlea is a large snail-looking structure inside of your inner ear. and it has a solid outside and it has a liquid inside. That liquid actually, from these cells on the outside, that liquid is kind of an oily, fluidy stuff, right? And that actually has little sensory hairs going into it. Now attached to this are 3 what are called the semicircular canals, and they all sit at right angles to each other in 3 dimensions. And they also have these little sensory apparatuses that are going to detect the movement of the fluid versus the solid. See, the solid part of your body has a different inertia than the fluid. Now, to help me illustrate this, since it's kind of hard to see because this is water, I brought some friends along. I brought Mr. Turtle, I brought Mr. Frog, and I brought Mr. Alligator. And they're going to help me to illustrate what I'm talking about. So you can now see that these things are in the fluid and they are stationary. Okay? And why is that important? As long as your head is not moving, the fluid in your inner ears and those semicircular canals are also stationary, and there's no triggering of the little sensory apparatus in those that indicates movement. You see, because if I begin to move my head, as I begin to move, watch what happens to the animals on the inside. As I move, pretty much they just sit there. They're kind of independent of the motion of the outside stuff. They'll move a little bit, but really not that much, right? So whenever you've moved your head, your body can indicate, your brain understands, I've moved, but very quickly you come back to equilibrium and nothing happens. Okay? This is how your body detects motion, right? Because the liquid in your inner ear has a different inertia. It moves differently compared to the solid part of your inner ear. And the difference in those 2 motions, your body detects. And that's how you know if you're moving or not moving, even if your eyes are shut. Now, what happens if you spin around a whole bunch? You get dizzy, right? So what's actually happening? Well, if you spin around consistently, then what happens is as you're moving, notice the guys are kind of staying in place, but the physical movement of that solid imparts inertia to the liquid so that when I stop, you can actually watch the guys beginning to rotate and spin around. You can actually see they're beginning to rotate, they're changing positions. So, as you begin to spin and spin and spin, you impart that rotational, that spinning motion, you impart that inertia to the fluid so that when you stop, the fluid continues to move. So your body thinks you're still moving, and so it tries to move your legs and other things to keep you on balance, and that's what makes you look all as you get all dizzy. And that's how dizziness happens. After a time, you can see the fluid settles back to its normal inertia and everything goes back to normal. That's why you're dizzy. That's how you keep balance. That's how you know if you're moving or not. And that's a function of the inner ear that has nothing to do with detecting outside senses as much as it detects your physical change in position compared to the rest of the world around you. And that is a very special part of your inner ear. So that's why you get dizzy. That's why you can maintain balance when you're not getting dizzy. All because of those semicircular canals and the way that fluid moves around inside of those tubes. Okay, so back to the ear themselves. How does hearing work? Well, you've got 3 parts to the ear. You've got the outer ear, the middle, and the inner ear. The outer ear consists really of 2 things. You've got the auricle of the ear, which is this big flappy thing right here. These flappy things are basically giant sound catchers. That's why if you put your cup your hands like this, you can hear better. It's amazing. So that's for capturing sound and channeling it into the auditory canal, which is this outer part of the ear. The auditory canal has in it wax glands and hairs and stuff like that, and that's all to stop things like dust and bugs and dirt and stuff from getting into your ear and causing damage, right? So That's the outer part of the ear. Gets sound in. Now, in between the outer and the middle ear, the outer ear and the middle ear, you have what's called the tympanum, or the eardrum. And what happens is, as the sound comes in to your ear, the eardrum will then vibrate, just like this. It's very exciting. So it'll vibrate back and forth. Okay. Now that vibration has to get picked up through the middle ear to transmit into the inner ear, where we can turn it into an electrical nerve signal and send it to your brain. The way that transmission works is because of the 3 tiniest bones in your body. They're all in that middle ear. There's the hammer, the anvil, and the stirrup. And those 3 are connected. And what happens is, as the eardrum vibrates, like this, it causes the hammer to bump against the anvil and the anvil to bump against the stirrup. And those will transmit those vibrations to what's called the oval window over here, which is a part of the cochlea, which is on the inner ear. And that oval window will then pulse back and forth, just like the eardrum is, and it will set up waves in the cochlea. We'll talk about that in a second. Now, those bones on the middle ear, these are really kind of cool because you actually have 2 tiny, tiny little muscles. One attaches to the hammer and one attaches to the stirrup. And what these muscles do is, if something is really quiet, then those muscles will yank on the bones and make it louder. But if something is really loud, those muscles will yank the other way to make things quieter. So they're there to help you. Now, the more you use those muscles, like loud concerts and things like that, the more you use those muscles in an extreme way, the more you can wear them out. That's why old people, we can't hear that high-pitched ringtone, so annoying. Well, it's annoying to y'all because y'all can hear it. We can't hear it, right? Why? Because your ears are young and those muscles are still functioning to amplify those higher-pitched sounds, where our ears don't work that way. What was that? Never mind. All right, so we don't function that way, right? And that's because those muscles wear out. Now, once those bones have transmitted that vibration into the oval window, that oval window then pulses and it sets up ripples inside the cochlea. And the cochlea is where that fluid is, the same fluid that's in the semicircular canals, that same fluid. And as it gets pulsed in and out, it will rub against those little hairs, just like we talked about. It'll rub against those little hairs, and each of those hairs will send a nerve signal to the brain so that the brain then can interpret those nerve pulses as sound. And that's where the sound comes from. Now, the cool thing about your ears also is not only can they maintain your balance and pick up sound waves, but because your ears are on either side of your head, if a sound is coming from this way, this ear will pick up the sound a little bit faster than this ear and a little bit louder than this ear. And that allows you to be able to know, ooh, sound came from that way. It becomes a directional thing. Owls are even cooler because many owls don't just have ears on either side. They're not just left and right, but they're also asymmetrical top to bottom, which means that they can hear not just in 2 dimensions the way we can for direction, they can hear in 3 dimensions. Ooh, that helps them to navigate the woods at night, to hear the mouse down in the leaves underneath the tree and know exactly where it is simply by the sound. But that was free. You don't have to know that. Okay, so that's how we hear. So the third sense that we're going to talk about is the sense of smell. The sense of smell takes place in the nose, where you have 10 to 25 million cells, all with thousands of little receptors on them, and they're all packed into a space about 2.5 square centimeters in the upper part of your nose up here. And it is there that as you breathe in, you pick up small molecules that are drifting around in the air, and they're coming in and they're logging on to those little receptor sites. And when those receptor sites trigger, they send messages back to the brain so that your brain can understand what it is that it's smelling. Now, most people can interpret thousands of different kinds of smells, but all of those smells are actually combinations of what are called primary odors. These are things like primary odors like, ooh, rotten, or yeah, flowery. things like that. These are some of the primary odors. And there's combinations of those that enable your body to interpret thousands of different types. Now, smell is very, very, very important. It's key. It's actually tied very closely with memories. Okay, that's because there's not a whole lot of filtering that goes on between nose and brain. Even to this day, if I smell a stick of cherry chapstick, it takes me back to when I was 12 years old and spent my entire summer in the high desert of Gregg, Colorado. Man, I have vivid memories of that time, and I'm like older than dirt, and I still have very vivid memories, sometimes memories that I didn't even know that I had about my time there, 12 years old during the summertime in that area. It's amazing how powerful this is. Now, this sense of smell also can get overrun. When you begin to smell something like cookies, come home and mommy's making cookies, that's awesome. Cookies are always awesome. Your smell, you pick that up and you go, yay, cookies. But very quickly you stop smelling the cookies. Why? We call it nose blind. And what nose blind is basically once your brain has figured out that, hey, this smell of cookies is not going to kill you, your brain quickly shuts down the receptors for it because it's not anything that's scary and dangerous. It doesn't need to know about it, okay? Now, other smells are very potent and you almost never go nose blind on them. One of those is sulfur dioxide. You know this as rotten eggs. When something is rotten and bad, your nose is extremely sensitive to that because that's something that can actually kill you. That's why with propane and other natural gases, which have no odor, they put sulfur dioxide into those gases so that you can recognize them if there's a gas leak. And that's your sense of smell. And that was a car. Sense number 4. Sense number 4 is the sense of taste. Now your taste and your smelling work together. That's why sometimes when you have a cold or something, all the food just tastes like oatmeal. It's really horrible. But that's because they work together. You can do an experiment. Next time you're out at a restaurant and you get some iced tea or some water, have them take a slice of lemon and put it on the edge of the glass. Now turn the glass so that when you drink, the lemon touches your nose. When that happens, your tea or water will actually taste like it has lemon juice in it. And that is because your nose and your tongue work together to process what it is that you're putting in your body in the way of food, whether or not it's good to eat or not. Now, your tongue itself is where all the taste buds are contained. And you've got 4 major senses of taste that you're going to do. You have sweet, you have sour, you have bitter, and you have salty. Those are the 4 different types that you have. So all the tastes are really combinations of those different things. Now, the way it works is you've got, as a baby, you actually had about 10,000 taste buds. And they're all these little mushroom-like structures on your tongue that have opening right in the top of them called the gustatory pore, where dissolved foods, your food has to be dissolved for you to taste it. Once it mixes with the saliva, it gets dissolved, you begin to pick up those flavors. And once those flavors begin attaching, it'll send signals back to your brain to tell you what it is you're tasting. Now, as you age, you lose taste buds. By the time that you're really old, like me, you might only have a few thousand left, like maybe 2,000 or something. You really don't taste much at all, okay? But that's all right. This is why, by the way, when you are a young child, broccoli, maybe not broccoli. But once you're old, it's like, oh, yum, broccoli. I like broccoli. It's not so bad. And that's why. Because I've lost a whole bunch of taste buds. That makes sense. That's your sense of taste. And last but not least, the sense of touch. Touch is sense number 5. And actually, all of your senses are actually contained within your skull. You've got touch, you've got sight, smell, taste, hearing, but touch is the only one that extends to the rest of your body. Oh, unless you're like an ant or a butterfly with little and the feet. Never mind, that's not important because you're not. You're a person. So touch is the only one that extends to the rest of your body. Why? Because your touch is a function of your skin, and you have a ginormous sense organ covering your entire body. Now, touch is actually detected in 4 major categories. You've got pain, you've got temperature, you've got pressure, and touch. Simple touch are things like the root hair plexus. These are little bundles of nerves at the base of each of your hairs, so that when you touch a hair really lightly, that hair functions like a lever. It moves, and that triggers the nerve underneath it, and that nerve then gets signaled that something is getting close to actually physically touching you.
And that's not nice. You're in my space. Get out of my space. And like, no touchy. In my,
I wonder if that's why when you get scared, your hair stands up. Why? Because it's pushing the hairs further away from your body, and that allows you to have kind of an early warning before something actually gets close enough to touch you. That is in need of investigation. So, other kinds of pressure or touch things. Pressure is a type of touch. Now, you have 2 types of pressure. You have the slow onset of pressure, and you have the rapid onset of pressure. Okay, like poking, and don't be that guy. No one likes that. No. All right. There you have 2 sets of nerves for each of those. Okay, you have Merkel's and Ruffini's receptors that help you with the slow onset and slow offset of pressure. And then you have Meissner and Pacinian receptors that help you with the rapid poking nonsense. Okay, and those all help you to interpret touch in the form of pressure. Now, you also have nociceptors. Nociceptors are the ones involving pain. So if something hurts, ow, I've been poked, I've been stabbed, I've been whatever, there's fire, all those things are all nociceptors, and they're telling you that there is imminent danger. You're actually being injured and not just touched and other things, right? And then the last group had to deal with temperature, and those are called thermoreceptors. These thermonerves, these are really come in 2 categories. These thermoreceptors, all right? They come in 2 categories. Thermoreceptors, sorry. They come in 2 categories. They have heat and you have cold. Now that makes sense, right? I mean, you only have hot and cold. Is what do you have, like a pleasure temperature? Like, this feels great. I don't think so. So hot and cold, the only 2 kinds that there are. Now the hot ones are very superficial because those can cause damage pretty quick. So those are really close to the surface of your skin. Where cold receptors, these are deeper down in the skin, which I think is why when you get kind of cold, you get kind of achy. You feel it deep when you're cold versus when you're hot. That's just speculation, but I think that's how we interpret it. So those are your 5 senses: sight, smell, taste, hearing, and touch. And they're the ways that our body gets information about the world around us and sends it to our brain for processing so that we can make informed decisions, which is muy importante. That's very good stuff. Those are your 5 senses.